All right. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Movie Talks and Chill. We are your hosts. I'm Tony Serrato.
I'm Gavin Butts.
I'm Patrick Wall.
And to our special guest, if you'd like to introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, my name is Rick Danford, writer, director, producer, and jack of all trades.
Pretty much anything in the film industry you got covered, right?
Pretty much.
So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We love having, guest speakers, interviews on. We've been doing this. I don't know how familiar you are with the show. I know we kind of connected on Facebook through our groups and stuff and mutual friends, but we started this over 2 years ago. We're actually in year 3 now. We started July 27th in 2021 when we launched. We've gotten to meet a lot of great people in the industry. And then we got hooked up with the Sunscreen Film Festival here in St. Petersburg. And so we did that for the past couple of years. So now we're officially we are the official podcast for the Sunscreen Film Festival, as they like to say now. So just got to meet and network with a lot of people. And now we're just reaching out more, and we'd love to get new perspectives and everything people are working on. So before we get into anything else, if you just kind of want to give the audience and everything a little bit of a background of, Rick, who Rick is, what got you into industry, what you've been doing.
Okay. Well, once again, my name is Rick Danford. I've probably been in the film industry for about 20 plus years. I started out making my first movie called The Web of Darkness. When I was initially going to go ahead and try and just write the script and sell it, we ended up, my partners convinced me, let's go ahead and make it ourselves, which ended up being the best of times and the worst of times. But it gave me a chance to work with Tom Savini. I got to work with Brink Stevens, and we shot our first feature film here in Tampa Bay. And it came out terrible, but it was a great learning experience and a lot of fun. And since then, I've pretty much been making short films and things of that nature. But I just finished my first feature film called The Clock that we just had our premiere on the 27th of last month. And it just played at Phantasm Orlando last weekend. And it won the Judges' Choice Award. So now we're getting some hits from distributors. We've got another feature film called Yard Sale Massacre coming up in November. I also run an Indie Horror Junkie website and magazine. We've got our 5th issue coming out October 13th. And we also launched our own Indie Horror Junkie podcast that we have had 6 episodes on so far. It's on every Wednesday. And also in 2024, we launched the Florida Horror Con, which is going to be huge. And we're really excited about that and working every day to get there ready to go.
Very nice, man. Well, and congratulations on The Clock and getting the award for that. So that's awesome. That's good stuff. It's funny when you did mention when you said the one movie did not turn out well, and it was a great learning experience. So when we get to meet Tony Armour, who was the film commissioner here up until last year, and he moved. Yeah, Tony. Everybody seems to know Tony.
That guy I even know Tony.
Yeah. But he was telling us, about how he got into doing the festival. He's like, me and my friend made a terrible movie. He said we didn't know what we were going to do next, and he said, hey, do you want to just start a film festival? They started doing that, and obviously he did a lot of producing and stuff and side stuff. So it's funny how everybody seems to have a very similar story with that. Like, hey, I did my first film. It was not good.
Complete shit. Well, when we talk with Doug and Ben, their first piece of advice is make that shitty movie and then just learn from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of Robert Rodriguez. I read his book, Rebel Without a Crew, and that's one of the things he said. Rather than go to film school, take that money and go make a movie. You'll learn more on set than you'll ever learn in a classroom. And that's pretty much what happened. I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong twice for us. But I am such a better filmmaker and know so much more about what needs to be done than I was that day one, I am now than I was that day one. So it was an incredible learning experience. And like I said, it was everything that could go wrong did, but I just learned so much and met so many good people. It kind of bit me, and that's where I went.
Oh, nice. And so you may have already said or touched on a little bit. So what actually got you into film? Like what into being like, hey, I want to start making movies. Was there like a key moment, or is it something you always want to do? As a kid, what was that like?
Well, that's probably the weird thing is when I first started, I wanted to be an actor, and I was trying to get into acting, and I was doing little. I did some little bits, and there was a movie called The FBI Murders that was filmed in Tampa. It starred David Soul from Starsky and Hutch and Michael Gross from Family Ties. And I had a bit part in that, and then another little cheesy horror movie called The Phantom of the Ritz. So I really thought I wanted to be an actor. And when I started writing, and I really always been into writing, I creative writing through school and everything. So when I wrote my first script, which was that Web of Darkness, like I said, I had no intention of making that movie. My goal was to try and get that script as good as I could, and then hopefully go out and find an agent and sell it and go from there. But my partner says, no, let's do this ourselves. There's a lot of resources here, but I knew nothing about making movies, so I went and reached out to another production company that was filming in Tampa Bay, and they said, hey, we'll take care of this for you. We'll take care of everything behind the camera. Just allow you guys to work with the actors and get your vision across. I thought, wow, this is great. I don't have to know anything. Well, that all changed from day one. So we ended up firing them. Yeah. We ended up firing them, I think, 3 or 4 times during the course of that movie, and kept bringing them back because we were trying to learn how from day one, their sound guy didn't show up, so we had to learn how to do sound. And now I know that sound is probably the most important thing of making a movie. You can fix bad video, but you can't fix bad sound. So, but once again, I wouldn't have known that had we not done that. So, through the course of that entire month of filming that movie and getting that done from beginning to end, I learned so much of what needs to be done, what has to be done, what I need to get better at. But it also gave me that feel that, man, I really like this. I enjoy this. This is really cool. And it just kind of like went from there.
Nice. And it's funny too, because just like you said about the bad sound, we interviewed some actual audio editors
Yeah.
one time who said
that's ironic.
Yeah, it's like, and but they were telling us about that, like they say like one of the biggest dreaded things an editor, an audio editor especially, or an audio engineer wants to hear is we'll fix it in post. They said that's like if as soon as somebody says that, they're like just dropping their heads like, oh Jesus, here, what do you got in it?
The irony of that video is that we forgot to turn on one of the mics, so we had to fix it in post to get their voice levels up.
It was our first year starting, and we had just gone into like doing this, and so
My
again,
bad. Thanks, guys.
it was learning. Luckily, we fixed it enough to where it was tolerable. Be able to get a lot of their information out there, and fortunately, it was just one of the 2 mics.
Yeah.
So at least one of the guys was very clear. But yeah, just like making movies, we do audio podcasts, so it's like that was a big learning experience.
Oh yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of things you can do to fix video and fix video issues, but audio issues are a whole different animal. But I had no idea back then. We were just figuring it out and learning it. Their DP that was doing all the filming, he was really, I guess, mainly a still photographer. So he spent the entire movie eliminating shadows. And I thought, hey, that's what you're supposed to do, right? No, you got to utilize shadows. You got the atmosphere and everything. So, but once again, we wouldn't have known that had we not gone through that process. So it was, to me, I look at that movie as a film school in the bottle.
Nice. So you mentioned the clock like we talked about. Can you give the audience, is all right if you give like a little synopsis on basically what the clock is about?
Sure. The clock technically, I mean, really, is about. When I was young, I used to listen to these radio shows. They have these old time horror radio shows on the radio. You can still listen to a lot of them on YouTube. And I remember back when I was 15 years old, I heard one called Hickory Dickory Doom. And it was about this clock that this couple brought home, this grandfather clock, and the clock ended up being a gateway to hell. So needless to say, a bunch of stuff ended up happening. So I fell in love with that episode. I've listened to that episode so many times through the years, and I always thought that, man, it would be so cool if Hollywood, rather than doing Fast and the Furious number 27, if they start delving into some of those, old horror shows, because some of them were really good, and turn them into movies. So I'm hoping that this is possibly the first one that's done that, because we based it on that particular show. Obviously, that show was a 30-minute show, so we had to enhance it and grow it, and I pretty much took a lot of liberties and created my own storyline, but the basic idea is the same. And it's basically about this grandfather clock, like I said, they bring home, and it turns out the grandfather clock is actually a gateway to hell.
Nice.
That sounds like a really good story, and I'm glad you were able to draw inspiration from your childhood and like a very unique story that you heard. But the moment you said radio show, I'm not gonna lie, the only thing I thought of was Drink More Ovaltine.
Yep, I'm telling you, that's how I got into Ovaltine, was hearing that thing beaten down to me. There's so many radio shows. I think that one was on one called CBS Radio Mystery Theater, if I remember. And that used to be like every Friday night at like 11 o'clock at night. It would come on. And back when I was 14, 15, it's like I'd go to sleep and listen to that radio show, and it would help put me to sleep. And some people are like, That's why you're probably so whacked right now.
Well, I remember, some family members when they were younger would listen to old school radio shows. There was one, it's called The Shadow. That's a real old school one.
Yes.
Only the
Yeah.
shadow knows. Do
Yep.
you know that one?
Oh yeah, I've heard a couple episodes. My dad used to like that one a lot, but that
Yeah.
was more thriller and stuff like that. I got into
Yeah.
the really hardcore horror stuff, and
Nice.
they had some really good ones. They had one called Lights Out that is really creepy. To me, that's what I've always enjoyed. When I met Tom Savini on the set of Web of Darkness, he always told me, and he's a legendary special effects makeup guy, but he always told me that you will scare people more with what they don't see, and what you don't show them than what you ever will put on camera. He said because their imagination can create so much more. So
John Carpenter in his old days was popular for that. I mean, take Halloween, one of his biggest claims to fame. I mean, you don't see Michael that much, and most of the time it's in the shadows. That's why actually the original character wasn't called Michael Myers; it was called the Shadow or something like that in the script when they first wrote it,
right.
because they didn't want him to really be seen or heard. And that's so kind of going to that. You don't see much, but it's that music that gets you.
Yeah, it goes
Like
back to the
that's what
sound
drives you.
there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Jaws. That
Yeah.
Yes.
they didn't have the
Two
shark.
tones.
They didn't have the shark on screen mainly because the shark wasn't working. So
Yep.
they had to rewrite the script to create all this dialogue. But by not seeing the shark and just hearing the different things and the viewpoint from the shark, it made it so much scarier.
Funny you brought up Jaws, huh, Patrick?
I've seen
One
the
of my
movie.
favorite movies of all time.
So Rick, just to let you in on a little joke that we've had, it's so Patrick, how many years have it been now?
Since I've seen it.
Yeah.
35.
4,
Yeah, so you was 34 when you first saw it?
33.
So
5
yeah,
years.
Patrick here was 33 years old until that was when he first saw Jaws. So
Wow.
he just saw Jaws like 4 or 5 years ago.
He hasn't
First
been to the
time
beach
ever.
since.
Yeah.
That's
I
gotta
wouldn't go to
guarantee,
the
right?
beach a whole lot before that. The beach is overcrowded and hot. Fuck that place.
That's true. Can't lie there.
So another thing I want to ask. So obviously very horror oriented. That seems to be kind of your area, your genre.
For the most part, yeah.
Was there something particular that geared you towards that genre, or do you ever think about doing like other genres, or is it just you love the art of it, or like tell us a little bit about what got you into that?
Well, in all fairness, I do all genres. I've done faith-based films. I've done dramatic films. I've done action comedy. I've done several different short films like that. I did one called The Lost that starred Steve Weintraub from the Golden Diamond Source, and it won several awards. That's a faith-based film that's getting added to a faith-based anthology. And so I've definitely done all that. But if I had to choose, horror has always been my favorite. I think it's just because from early on, my father was a horror fan. He took me to the movies. To see horror movies. He had me listen to those radio shows. He used to read horror books, got me into them. So it just was in my blood. There's just something about the feelings you get and the emotions you get with a good horror story that kind of locks you in or whatever. That's that adrenaline rush or whatever it is. I just love it, and being able to create something that will get people to jump or scream. That's what I enjoyed about The Clock. I went to the screening, the initial screening, and we had a sold out crowd. And I sat in the back of the room, and to see certain parts with people jumping or hiding their eyes and this and that just brought tears.
No, that is awesome. Before I go on, do you guys have anything you want to talk about just yet?
No?
Well, no, just maybe like in your career so far, is there something that you've been driven to that you haven't, like a prize project or something you haven't had the chance to do yet?
As a matter of fact, there is. Of all the horror, of all the, I guess all the monsters you would call it, that I really truly enjoy, I'm a big werewolf fan. And I've seen so many werewolf movies, American Werewolf in London being the best werewolf movie I think I've ever seen, but I've read so many books, and that's always been my love. So I wrote, 20 years ago, I wrote a script called Lycanthrope, which I think is an amazing script. I actually submitted the finished version to the New York City Horror Film Festival for their screenwriting competition, and it was a finalist. And I've had several people talk about it. So what I've been doing over the past 20 years is just kind of redoing it and honing it and making sure that it's the best of the best. But that's my prize project right there. One day, if ever given the opportunity, that's the movie I would like to make. But to do it, we have to have a werewolf that looks amazing, because one of the things that I've always not liked about other werewolf movies is that sometimes you don't see them. you'll see a flash of fur or a claw or a growl, and you don't really see him. My werewolf, you see him in his full glory in the first 5 minutes. So, and he's a major character throughout the entire movie. So, if he does not look amazing, it's just not going to work. So, I'm just making sure that I keep it back, wait for the right opportunity, and then hopefully bring that to life.
Oh,
Awesome.
fantastic. No, that's really cool, man.
Mm.
I like that. I see because, like I said, originally we connected like through Facebook through mutual stuff, and I've seen a lot of the posts about some of the stuff you've done, like what we were talking about, and some things coming up. You did say the what was the horror fest coming up? There's one coming up in October, I think. Is that
Well,
or a
we have
festival?
one coming up in October called the Necro Nancy Horror Film FestEVIL. That's October 28th. That's going to be
Hmm.
held at Cinema 6 in Port Richey. We've got several vendors that are going to be out there. We're going to have a table for our upcoming Florida Horror Con. April Hunter, cosplayer actress, she's going to be out there, as well as David Summery, who's a former artist for Marvel and DC. He's actually doing some of our artwork for the Florida Horror Con. He's going to have a table. And then we've got from I think it's 10 a.m. until about 9 p.m. We're going to have wall-to-wall horror shorts and feature films
Nice. And you said that's in Port Richey?
in Port Richey, Cinema
Okay.
6
Cinema Six.
on
Okay.
US 19.
Nice. No, that's really cool. And I also wanted to talk about the Nightmare Collection. I see that a lot. Can you give the viewers a little bit of insight on what the Nightmare Collection is?
Yeah, the Nightmare Collection actually started right after I finished Web of Darkness. It was about 20 years ago, and I was running film festivals, and there was a couple of films that came on that I really loved. And by running a film festival, you get the unique opportunity to really get to know some of the filmmakers and meet some of them and talk to them. And some of them didn't have distribution, weren't sure what they were going to do. There wasn't really a whole lot you could do with short films. So I kept thinking, man, I would love to put together like an anthology that we could do maybe once a year or something. And rather than just do an anthology and put together a couple of short films, I wanted to create a character and have a storyline, and then just kind of interject a couple of different shorts to fill it out to feature length, but actually have, rather than just have like an Elvira sitting on a couch introducing short films, we
Okay.
created Necro Nancy, which is played by Krista Grady Saxon, and she actually plays out a storyline. And during that storyline, she's introducing these different short films while they play out. So it's actually like a feature film. So we did that first one and released it. It's out on DVD. You can get them on Amazon and a couple other places. We're really proud of that one. We packed the DVD with extras. For each film, you can go to a separate section and see just the film, or you can see behind the scenes, um, additional deleted scenes, audio commentary, all kinds of stuff like that. And we also created an origin comic that details the rise and fall of Necronancy, and put a comic inside each of the DVDs. So our plan was to create one of those every single year, and of course that was 21 years ago we did that one, and we just did volume 2. So it's been a little bit, but yeah, we're hoping to do volume 2 and then continue on from there. The actual wraparound that we filmed for volume 2 that stars Krista again has actually been playing some of the different film festivals, and it actually won at the Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival. It won Best Horror Short there, and won a couple of other awards as well. And we're right now compiling all the extras and hope to have volume 2 out by either the end of the year or first quarter.
Fantastic. And yes, we actually know Krista pretty well. She was actually our very first guest we ever actually
Yeah.
had on the show. She was the
I've
first
known her for
interview
over
we
20
ever.
years.
Yep. Yep. I met her probably around the same time, maybe a little over. I think it was she was promoting a movie called what was it? It was a short film she wrote and directed. It was at USF. They were having like a small little film festival type screening over there. And that's actually where I first met her. What is it?
Was it called Alarum?
Alarm. Yes, that's exactly what it was.
She wrote it. I directed it.
Oh,
She
was
asked me
it?
to
Was that you
direct it. Yeah.
directed it?
And that little film festival you went to was my Halloween Horror Picture Show.
Oh, okay.
At USF. So wow, yeah,
I know.
that's
That is insane.
It's a small world.
It is.
Yeah, I remember it was a long time ago. I was actually doing some film writing, directing myself at the time. Never made much of anything out of it. But I was at the time doing it, and I wanted to meet up, and that's how I met Tony Armour, and he was a producer around here at the time, and he said, "Hey, you got to check out some of these things. There's this thing going on in USF." So I drove out there on a whim, didn't know what it was really. Sat down for the screening. I met her real quick, and then just kind of try to do some meet and greets with people. So who knows? We might have shaken hands 20 years ago.
We probably did because I was there. And like I said, I directed that movie, Alarm. She was a good friend of mine that we had met on a set of Filthy. She made a short film, Filthy, which I believe was the very first film she ever shot. And I knew the director. His name was Andy Lolino, and he invited me to the set. So I got to meet Krista there and fell in love with her because she's just got such an amazing personality and she's such an incredible actress. So we got to talking. That's how we got her involved in the Nightmare Collection. And right after that, she had written Alarm and asked me to direct it for her, so we did. And I remember it played there. That was I don't think that was the first Halloween Horror Picture Show, but that was like the third or fourth. And we just celebrated year 22 over at MegaCon. We were doing it at MegaCon every year.
Okay, nice. That's a small world, man.
Unbelievable, yeah, unbelievable.
That is crazy. No, that's all. And she's a wonderful person. And like I said, I hadn't talked to her. I had only met her and stayed in short contact with her over the years, like through maybe email here and there. And when we started the show, I told the guys, I said, hey, I'll reach out. I'll see, what she says. Like I didn't have her number or anything. I just had her Facebook and an email and sent out, and she responded right away. She's like, yeah, I'll come on and do it. I was like, we just got started. I think it was like a month and a half into our show. We were brand new. Her mic was working, so that's good. So at least we got through that one. But no, it was really cool though. She is awesome, and I always keep track of what she's doing, working on, and follow her on her YouTube channel as well. So, but really nice person though.
Well, I was in California until just this morning when I told you I just came through. So I missed I believe it's called the Fear Fame Film Festival that was just held yesterday, and I gave her my ticket because she was actually nominated for Best Actress for the Nightmare Collection Volume 2. So it actually screened there, and she was there, and they just sent me pictures this morning from the festival. So I really wish I could have gone, but I just got in, like I said, 5 o'clock this morning, so I missed it. But she was up for Best Actress for that.
Nice. That's awesome.
Good for her.
Did you have something?
No.
Okay. So I want to ask you too, before we take a break here in just a little bit. So I see in here when we talked and we kind of sent a message that you have a filming of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Wrong Turn type film that you're working on. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. It's called Yard Sale Massacre. I'm finishing up the script now. I'll have it done by the weekend. And we've already got it mostly cast. We're going to start locking down locations and everything. October, pretty much the whole month of October is just going to be pre-production. And if everything goes as planned, we're going to be filming it the first 2 weekends of November. And then it'll hopefully be ready to seek distribution by either late December or January.
Okay. Fantastic.
Very nice.
Well, if you need a group of 3 guys that get lost and go down the wrong alley, we're happy to get you.
This might be that
I
movie.
do that for free. All you got to do is follow me with the camera.
Yeah, just follow us around. We're happy to get killed.
Yeah, 3 coolest idiots. We're down for
3
it, man.
coolest idiots. That could just be our line in the edits.
Oh, that's fantastic, man. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about, like I said, we'll probably in a few minutes, we'll probably take a quick break and then come back. But before that, I wanted to ask kind of, you kind of mentioned earlier when you said, instead of making the next Fast and Furious 27, and I'm in hardcore agreement with you on that stuff about like,
Same.
We've talked a lot of times about not just that one, but things getting saturated. It's the same old stuff and not original ideas. What do you feel about like direction, like Hollywood, besides the strikes? We know that's going on right now with the writer and the SAG-AFTRA strikes, but how do you feel like, in your opinion, Hollywood has been over the past, let's say 10, 20 years? Because we've talked about and given our opinions many times on what we feel about it, but what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Well, to me, I mean, if you really look at it, the people that I've talked to in the industry and stuff, it's not really that. A lot of people will say the first thing that comes off to mind is the reason that they're doing Fast and the Furious and the Marvel movies and this and that is because Hollywood's run out of ideas, and that's not true. Hollywood's got a lot of ideas. The problem with Hollywood, though, is that they're like a corporation, and they need to make money. It's not about passion. It's not about creativity. It's about making money and making bank, or else they can't make the next movie. So the reason they do these movies and multiple sequels and stuff like that is basically because built-in relevance, like Friday the 13th or Halloween or Fast and the Furious. It's got a fan base. No matter how silly it is or whatever it is, they know that they're going to get these people to turn out and watch this movie and buy the DVD and everything else. So they're kind of playing with house money when they make these movies, as long as they can make it for a reasonable budget, because they know they've got a built-in fan base, they've got a built-in draw, the name has name recognition, so it's a lot easier and a lot less risky for them to make those movies and put them out there, as opposed to doing something completely unique that you have to market and you have to put additional monies and everything else into, because people have never heard of it before, and get it out there. But the beautiful thing about the horror genre is that the horror genre is known for not having to need main actors. You don't need to have a Brad Pitt. You don't need to have an Angelina Jolie. You don't need to have anything. Horror genre people get into horror movies because of the story, because of the graphics, because of the kills, or whatever the case may be. And they're always popular. Just look at Terrifier, if you've ever heard of the movie Terrifier.
Yep.
And I've gotten to know these filmmakers because we actually did a piece on them in my Indie Horror Junkie magazine, and we're going to be working with them for Florida HorrorCon. But they made the first Terrifier, I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 15 grand. Then the movie got picked up by a distributor, and it made 10 million. That's a pretty good return on investment.
Yeah.
So for part two, they did part two, I think, for 250,000, which is a huge increase in their budget. But they made 23 million or 25 million in the theaters. Once again, huge ROI. Now they're getting ready to do part three, and the word that I'm getting is part three is going to have a budget in the millions, like 1 to 2, maybe up to 5 million, which in Hollywood terms, that's ultra low budget. But for us, that's, oh my God, we've made it now, you know? So, but that's the thing, is that you can do them for low budget. Skinamarink is another one. I got to know Jamie Hill, who's the actress from Skinamarink. And Skinamarink was made for like 8 grand, something like that. And it got picked up by distributors and picked up by Shudder and made over 10 million. So when you're a film producer in Hollywood, that's why they get behind. But horror's always like the redheaded stepchild. I don't understand it. They don't want to admit they like it. They don't want to admit that they're going to push it and back it. But it makes them money. You spend 8 grand here and you make 10 million. That's craziness. Okay, but they do it. But they do it consistently. But they don't. I don't know what it is. They just don't seem to like it. So they just, we'll do it because it's going to make us money and because there's always a market for horror. But that's not our bread and butter. We're not going to win an Academy Award with Skinamarink, you know?
Yeah.
So, but then they'll go and make Indiana Jones for 300 million, and they're going to end up losing 200 or 300 million on that.
Yep. Well, you know, what are you going to do? It's like,
make a better movie.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right? Make a better
Yeah.
movie.
Send Harrison Ford off better.
Well, we definitely want to actually, there's a couple other points I want to talk about this subject, but we need to take a quick break. So what we'll do is we'll break real quick. For the audience, we will be back in just a few minutes with Rick Danford. So Rick, we'll talk to you in just a few
As far
minutes.
as they're concerned, it's going to be instantaneous.
Yeah.
I'll put a trailer in for him.
There you go. The clock trailer would be good.
All right, Rick, we'll talk to you in a second. Guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Well, now, sorry about that, man.
That's all
I
good.
don't love technical difficulties. So I told you we mastered audio. Now the video we got. So yeah, just going back though. So we talked about, like, you know, with Hollywood and, you know, with you know, they don't use big name actors and stuff, and that's usually a good thing because it also keeps the budget low. The funny thing on the reverse end of that, if you go back to like old school classic movie, you know, horror movies and stuff, a lot of people end up getting their big breaks from those type movies too. I mean, you take like Johnny Depp was in the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that was his first actual movie role, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right.
Yeah, he might have been. I think he was either doing 21 Jump Street, I think right before that or right after that, but that was
around
his
the
first
same
movie
time.
role. But you know, and then you get like, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis. She was
Halloween.
She wasn't known as anybody. I mean, there's just, you get a lot of interesting people that end up becoming people who get those Oscars from the other type of Hollywood movies we're talking about. So
Absolutely.
I guess it seems almost like could be like more like a stepping stone, you know, for a lot of people, you know, get your experience, you know, out there and, you know, just kind of grow from there. So when you brought that up, I thought that was an interesting point of how it actually can grow careers, but nobody wants to take in people that already actually have careers. I mean, the nearest one I could think of, and I'm sure there's many more besides it, would be, what was it? Not the most, but the first Rob Zombie Halloween remake. The first one, not H2O. No, it was the Rob Zombie one.
I thought that was Rob Zombie.
Right.
Who was the one that played Loomis, Dr. Loomis? That was Malcolm
Oh
McDowell.
yeah, I know who you're talking about. I know the actor. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I know who you're talking about.
I mean, Malcolm McDowell is what
Malcolm
I'm thinking. Is that who I'm? Okay, yeah. So he was pretty well
Yeah,
known
he's
actor. I
very,
mean, he was
very
very
well known.
seasoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even
Absolutely.
and you can take you know, Vince Vaughn in the remake of
Psycho.
Psycho, and then he also tries it again. I think kind of doing more comedy. I just remembered it 'cause
Freaky.
I watched it last
Freaky.
week. Yeah, with Freaky. I actually like that one better than Psycho. I think he
Oh
did a
yeah.
lot better in that one. Of course, he
I
got
thought
to play
Psycho
two
was trash.
parts.
Yeah. And I'm a big Vince Vaughn fan, but I thought Psycho was terrible. And Freaky, I thought was cute because
Yeah.
it was a different kind of thing, and that I like when you try and get creative and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But they have had big, big name actors and stuff in big movies. I mean, if you think about Brad Pitt in World War Z,
Yeah.
that was a big budget movie, and that had Brad Pitt and a few other big actors, and that made a good deal of money. And word is they're supposed to be having sequels and stuff, but I think it's just
Supposedly.
more cost effective because you don't need a big actor for a horror film. It's always nice if you can do something like that, but you got to look at what a Brad Pitt brings to the table as far as contracting wise and what his cost is going to be. But then again, his Plan B production company also co-produced it too, so it's kind of a different situation. But what I'm saying is that from Night of the Living Dead on and stuff, you don't need a name actor. You don't need big name people. Therefore, you get the young up and comers, the people who are trying to cut their teeth in the movies, the people who are getting their first chance to do something or whatever, and aren't going to cost you anything, or at least not much. And if you do it and you make a good story and you put in some good special effects and stuff, it doesn't matter. That's all it needs. I just wish Hollywood would give horror more of the respect it deserves because they bank on it enough. They go and Disney goes and creates what is it? I think Dimension Films or whatever,
Mhm.
which was just horror films, and they do it under Dimension Films, so people don't see the Disney name, but Disney's still cashing the checks.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm saying is like if you're gonna accept the money and you're gonna accept all that stuff, give these people their just due.
Yep. And I think it's also like New Line Cinema kind of started out that way
Mhm.
too. They originally started, I think Nightmare on Elm Street was one of the first ones they had done.
I know they made
Yeah.
Friday because
Yeah.
I saw that on the title card and I was like, oh shit. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, they
Yeah.
obviously grew and expanded, but
Yeah.
they kind of started out just doing small,
Shitty little Ice Cube movies.
yeah, yeah.
Little Ice Cube movies, yeah. Because there's so many unanswered questions from the original Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There was a ton.
Yeah.
I just
Yes.
started I just started rewatching it this morning while I was making breakfast, and it's been so long since I've seen the movie. I'm basically watching it for the first time again, and it's
Yeah.
fantastic. I love this
Oh,
movie.
it's classic. The
I mean,
rest of them you could forget.
I'm waiting for him to do Debo the Young Years.
Yeah, prequel.
Don't give me. There's somebody right now probably writing that down.
Well, we're copywriting it here and right now.
There you go.
This is
Okay.
our idea.
This has been recorded.
Yes.
So another thing I want to talk about, speaking of like, lower budget production companies, one that's well known, I know you know this, but Mr. Lloyd Kaufman, the Trauma team, Trauma movies. I know a lot of people, they're kind of in a weird mixed genre because they're like science fiction, but they mainly put them under horror because there's always some kind of weird toxic or mutated monster in some of their movies or most of them. But what are your thoughts on how like the Trauma team has done it? Because those guys still are going strong.
And one of their movies
they've
is
been-
getting a main streak release with the remake of Toxic Avenger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones. Yeah, is in
Mhm.
Toxic Avenger. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think that just had a premiere the other day. If I'm
I
not
only
mistaken.
saw that they dropped a couple of like promotional photos.
No,
but-
they actually did release the movie. It was at a festival or an event.
Oh, okay.
I want to say either this weekend or maybe last week sometime. But yeah, I
It
noticed
was just
that.
recently, but they had a picture of it, and it was like a sold out crowd, so it's definitely done. But I don't know when we're going to see a trailer. So far, all we've seen, like you said, are just some promotional pictures and stuff. But I'm interested. As far as Trauma goes, I mean, I've gotten to know them a little bit. I know a few people from them. We had the Trauma team at one of my film festivals. My Mirror Mirror, A Tale of Blood short film was requested by Trauma to play on their streaming service. So it's playing there now, along with another one called God Help Us. So, I mean, it's a different bird with Trauma because they're not straight horror. They're more campy, sexualized, and stuff like that, or whatever it is. Which there's always a market for stuff like that. But I give them all the credit in the world. Lloyd's a great guy. I've met him a couple of times at the different film festivals, and it's hard to believe he's been doing this for that long. And I think, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, but I think Lloyd actually first got his start as like I don't know if he was a script supervisor or something like that on The Godfather, or something like that, something major or whatever. And then how he went from there to Trauma, I'll never know. But hey,
Well,
I've read a bunch of stuff about him because I like Trauma for what it is. I mean, you take it like you
oh
said,
yeah,
they're basically like just like
you know,
sexploitation,
it's
grotesque
boobs and
exploitation,
it's boobs and violence. That's
yeah,
all it
yeah,
is.
basically,
right.
Especially the first one.
throwing some radiation or toxic
Yeah.
waste, and
Sounds
then
terrible.
you got a movie right there. But I read a bunch of stuff about him. I think just as a respect level for what he's done, how he keeps doing it, because he's wrote many books too that have been bestsellers, like in the industry. Like go ahead and make your own damn movie, I think is something one of them's called, or and like kind of make a movie with nothing. And he's written a bunch of stuff, but I saw a couple interviews with him on it, and he's basically said, it's just I can do whatever I want. I don't have to answer to anybody. The people who backed me on other films continue to back me for new films. He said he basically doesn't have to, and I may be misquoting it, so don't quote me on this, but I believe one of the lines
I'm
basically
putting this
said
on the
he doesn't
internet.
really have to do a pitch. He just walks up, he's like, "Hey, I got this idea," and they're like, "Okay, go ahead and do it." And they're like, "We know it's not going to be world renowned or Oscar nominating." But the funny thing about it, also, the reason why I wanted to bring that up is going back to the other point that I said is there is a lot of major actors who have started in trauma movies, like older ones, or a lot of them now that are big name, A-list actors, even high B-list actors that want to be in one of his films and go back. Like I think it was it James Gunn, I think
James Gunn
started
started
off
there.
with
Yeah.
them. Yeah. And so but you get like all these big name people in Hollywood that are doing these, blockbusters, summer blockbuster, Oscar nomination. They want to do a trauma movie. So that kind of speaks to that as well. It's like it's nice to see that people want to go back to that type of format and just say, hey, it's simple, it's fun.
Yeah.
It goes back to why they really wanted to do it.
Well, I
Um,
think a lot of it is because they're given carte blanche. It's basically like they're given the freedoms and stuff that they're just not given with the studio films. I don't know how many times I've heard of movies being made in the studio system, and then all this once the movie gets done, then the studio gets their hands on it, and they're in there tweaking it and editing it, and this and that. And by the time you end up seeing that movie on the screen, it's not what the director really wanted to show, and not what the director's proud of or what he wanted to put on screen, but it's what the studio thinks is the right thing, or what the studio thinks what the audience wants, or whatever. We end up usually getting a trash movie, and then later on down the road, you may see a director's cut where the director's trying to say, "Hey, this is what I wanted to show." And I think that's a big problem with the studio is that the studio are run by a bunch of people who aren't really big film fans. They're fans of the process. They're fans of the system and stuff like that, and what they think makes money. But whereas independent film and people like with Lloyd and stuff like that, he gives you your creative freedom. You're the filmmaker. You make what you think is going to work. And by giving that kind of freedom and being able to bring to life what it is that you wanted to see in the first place, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And that's why these people, jump into opportunities like that.
Absolutely. Did you want to see?
I just wanted to bring up the same point about the A-list actors that started out in Trauma Team because I was watching The Toxic Avenger 2, which is not as good as the first one. But one of the guys that gets out of the limo to beat up the Toxic Avenger is Michael Jaleel White, and he's just in like a red latex outfit with nunchucks. And I was like, "Holy shit, that's Michael Jaleel White in this really shitty movie."
Mm-hmm. Well, there's so many actors. I was just thinking about it the other day. That's a great point. Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio's first role was in Critters 4. And what's the girl's name from Striptease and Demi Moore.
Yep.
Demi Moore. Her first role was a movie called Parasite, which was an old '80s, sci-fi horror movie or something. So yeah, you could go on and on and stuff like that about stuff like that. But that's the thing is that they're just trying to get in front of the screen. They're just trying to show what it is they're worth and move on to something else. But I do also believe that a lot of them really enjoy, the horror films and their early roots and stuff like that. That's why you see some of them come back.
Mm-hmm. Well, even that, like when you speak of like horror and actors, Jennifer Aniston in Leprechaun.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, I've seen Leprechaun. No offense to your chosen genre, Rick, but I'm not a horror fan. I scare very easily.
Yeah.
Ah.
Not so much that he's not a fan, he's afraid of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Basically,
I'm
his bottom line
genuinely
is like,
scared. I'm not one of those people who likes being scared. Like give me a good old John Wick movie any day of the week.
his reaction to horror movies is why you make horror movies. To
Yeah,
see people jump.
exactly.
That's this guy right here.
Yeah, because that's the stuff you're talking about years from now. Is that time when I had to hide my eyes and I couldn't
Yep.
watch it. We went to see The Exorcist. My parents took me to see that when I was a little kid, and I had my little sister there. And I remember, if you remember The Exorcist, you might not, obviously, since you're not a horror fan, but the rest of them might. But there's a part in the movie where they're trying to, I guess, exorcise her, and her eyes turn white, and it's a
Yep.
pretty shocking scene. From that moment, my sister screamed and ran out of the drive-in. She didn't want to see the movie anymore. And I think to this day, she's tried to watch that movie and can't get past that one part. And that's a movie from the 70s.
So
You know,
I think I
that's
just
crazy.
watched the movie Poltergeist way too young as a kid. So I even to this day I can't not even like they're here like the chairs stacking on top of the kitchen table still freaks me out to this day, and I'm 38 years old. Like I'm not watching that movie ever.
Well, then you don't want to watch The Clock because we actually stole that scene. But we stole that part from Poltergeist where she's folding clothes and she's talking on the phone on the bed, and she walks over to the dresser and puts something down and comes back and the clothes are all over the place. So that's where I got that from, was Poltergeist. But in fairness to Poltergeist too, I know it scared you, but I remember when that movie came out and they didn't market it like that, and they made it PG-13. So a lot of people went into it innocently, thinking like it's not going to be that bad, and then they got assaulted, and it got a lot of attention.
I get emotionally scarred for the rest of my life.
Exactly, because you didn't know what you were getting into going in.
Yeah. Now I know to not go see movies labeled The Ring.
Usually anything that starts with the, and
Yeah.
two words in the movie.
Ring, The Grudge.
Friend of mine says, "Oh, this is based off a Japanese horror." Like, no, dude.
Hard pass.
Those guys are really messed up. I know what they can do.
Oh yeah, they can, and that's the thing is I've seen a lot of their films. Because I'm a big fan of the Asian horror films, and some of them they'll do things that you'll never see in an American remake because they don't care.
I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki. Not so much the Japanese.
Oh, so am I.
Yeah.
I got my daughter into all of those. We love those.
Yeah. Boy and the Heron comes out in December. I'm looking forward to that so much.
Princess Mononoke was kind of creepy and scary though.
A little bit, yeah, but thankfully I didn't see that until I was in college.
And I've never been like a big fan of international films and watching. I didn't really like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It was good. I just didn't. When I was younger, I didn't like following the subtitles. Like I got to read through this damn movie. But I will say, like one of the ones I've come to appreciate really, really good is Train to Busan. That was a great.
that was
a great zombie movie.
I was not expecting that movie to be as good as it was.
I was not either, and I've fallen in love with that, and I think they got a second one coming up.
Probably.
They have a sequel already.
Yeah.
And they have a prequel. The sequel is called Peninsula.
Okay.
And that came out. It's not the same thing. So if you're going in there expecting a Train to Busan, model, it's not the same thing. But it is really good in its own way. And then they have an animated prequel called Soul City that talks about how it all started, and that's really good as well. So they did very well.
So a follow-up question for you on that, because I know you've gotten into animation on that. Do you feel like that is different from, or you get to tell maybe a gorier story? You get away with a lot more liberties doing like an animation horror film as opposed to a live action?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure if you can get away with a lot more. I think with animation, I mean, especially with the Japanese animation stuff like that, it's so amazing. With like you saw Miyazaki movies and stuff, it's just unbelievable. It's like it's art. It's true art. I just think that when you have an animated film, at least in my eyes, okay, you have that level of disbelief because it's animated. It doesn't strike you kind of the same way as seeing a live action film would be, and then because you automatically put yourself in that thing that this could be happening, I could be right there. Whereas with the animation, it's not. So I think you can do a lot more that way, and their threshold's probably a lot higher due to the fact that it's animated and people have that level of understanding that it's animated. So there might be something to it because of that.
So you kind of lose that wow factor as opposed to being like like live action. Gotcha.
Yeah. Whereas in live action, you believe you could be there and it could be real. And like Blair Witch, when people went to see Blair Witch, I remember talking to the girl who Donahue who played it, and she said that they did a Q&A at one of the screenings, and she was there, and she says, "You don't know how many people came up to me and looked at me with shock, thinking I thought you were dead," because they thought this was a real documentary. They didn't understand.
Right.
And to this day, people just still think that stuff's real.
Nice, man. I do have I have a question kind of, so we've talked a lot about like the Hollywood versus, horror. And obviously you're local here in, Pinellas County, Tampa area. So one thing we've asked a lot of people who are local talents is your opinion on how you've seen, like, what is your thoughts on how you've seen the growth of film in the area of like Tampa Bay area? Because, it wasn't that well known, X amount of years ago. I mean, there were people doing it, but now you have, I mean, there's film festivals going on all the time around here now. So what are your kind of thoughts on just film in general in the area and independent wise?
Well, I think that I've got a unique perspective because I'm not just a filmmaker, but I have been running film festivals. And like we talked about, when you run a film festival, you get to meet the filmmakers, you get to meet the actors, you get to meet the actresses, you get to meet the people who are fans of those films. You get to talk with them and get a full understanding of what's going on, where how it is they get into this stuff and what they do behind the scenes. So I've gotten to meet a lot of these people and understand the community as a whole, as opposed to just looking at it as a filmmakers. So I remember when I first got into it, they had a few filmmakers around, but there wasn't a whole lot. Now it's like you said, they've got film festivals popping up left and right. Fear Fame just had their first one this past week, and that was their first ever one. I've got the Halloween Horror Picture Show, Necro Nancy, and then over in when we get to Florida HorrorCon, I'm going to have the Mistress Mary Horror Film Festival. So they're popping up all over the place. But I've also, by doing the film festivals, by doing my Indie Horror Junkie magazine and actually writing about some of these different movies, I've gotten to meet these people, and it's just crazy if I think about what it was like 20 years ago as compared to today. There are so many more people doing it now, and so many more people really enjoying it and getting into it, and so many more outlets that there weren't 10 or 15 years ago. And I just love it because as an independent filmmaker, obviously it's a lot harder than if you were the studio. If I'm working for Universal Studios and I'm going to make Jurassic Park 2nd, okay, and I'm going to go and do that as a director, okay, I know exactly what my job is going to be. I'm going to work with the actors and actresses. I'm going to work with the DP, and that's it. Every other position is going to have somebody or two people handling everything and have everything set up and all that. When you're an independent filmmaker, you're wearing a million hats. I'm the writer, the director, the producer. I sometimes run out and pick up the food. I have to shuttle actors and actresses back and forth to set. I have to lock down locations and secure funding and all that stuff. I have to put together table reads and everything. I help build the website. So to me, as an independent filmmaker, you're able to do so many different aspects of the film process and what encompasses an entire film, as opposed to just filming the movie and walking away to the next project. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You get to be involved in so much more, which gives you a unique perspective, because when I talk about, we'll fix it in post, I know that's not the case, because I know what the DP is going through. I know what the sound guy's going through. I know what the editor's going through, because I'm part of all that. And I see it. And you don't want to say fix it in post. I say that as a joke, until somebody throws something at me.
Yeah.
Okay? But I know it because you're in there. As an independent filmmaker, you wear a million hats. And to me, that's part of the charm of it. That's part of what gets me into it, is and gets my juices flowing, is the whole creative process and seeing something. And the one thing that I've told people before too, that is something that sticks with me, is that I've been writing films for 20 years. Okay, I've done multiple short films and the feature films, and still to this day, you get a special feeling when you're sitting behind that camera watching a good actor or actress reciting lines that you wrote, that you're bringing to life a character that was only in my head a year ago or whatever it is, because I wrote it. I don't think that'll ever change, and that's something that you take with you to your grave, because you can't experience that anywhere else. You can't go work for a software company and write a report and send it out there and go, damn it, I wrote that. That was amazing. When you read that report, I felt it. No, it's not the same thing.
I analyzed all that data. Those numbers are.
I live that every day.
No, that's great. That's also kind of like, to your point, like one thing you said also, like, it's there's a lot more resources now to be able to do this. So not only just in terms of outlets to get to, like, you have film festivals where you can submit. You don't, you're not having. It's not like a con, Cannes Film Festival where it's very very limited, or you got to really be in that business in a big way. But so you have outlets to get your film out there. I mean, you have, even if you want to do it just for free, you got YouTube. You can get your information, your movies out there just to get a fan base. Social media, you can post the stuff on Facebook. You become your own marketer as well. But
Yeah.
also on the other end is like equipment. It's so much. I mean, a lot of people, there are people making full movies on their iPhones, or their smartphones, and
Yeah.
you don't need to rent the $1,000, $2,000 a day equipment, and just video equipment, and then have film stock, and then get it get it
And a lot of that stuff
yeah.
now, like even well, at least the simple versions, they're free now.
Oh yeah, like the editing and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, and editing. I mean, you don't need a full Avid system anymore. I mean,
No.
it's nice if you want to do certain things, or if if you have a certain job and a higher budget. But I mean, you can do amazing things with a basic version of I mean, Pinnacle, or a free one. I mean,
Lightworks.
Lightworks, yeah,
DaVinci is the big one.
DaVinci, yep.
DaVinci is the big editing software right now that everybody, the studios are using and everything, and that's free.
Yep. So it just kind of goes to show you, like, before, you really had to have, you basically had to have a business plan. You had to get, money somewhere, either borrow it or have family investors, or have a business plan, and try to get people to invest in you. Then you had to find the equipment, then you had to find the people and the time, and everything was a lot. But again, like I said, some people can just go out there with their phone and, plug a little
Well,
mic
then,
extension in there, or a lavalier,
yeah, that costs like
wireless.
$20 on
Yeah.
Amazon. But Apple did a whole commercial about making a short film with iPhone 11s back when they first launched. It's actually really cool, except it was an iPhone.
Yep. So yeah, that was just kind
People
of the
can
point.
get creative.
I just wanted to bring that up and just kind of piggyback off what you were saying. But not just, like I said, just the equipment, being able to make the movie, but also once you made the movie, even if you had the money to do it, the outlet to get it out there. I mean, you had to send it out to, out of state, or across the country, to whatever film festival you could find. But here you have so many ones going on, all different types. You have
And
ones
it's a
that
click of a button to upload your submissions. So
yeah, yeah, you just
sending out
explain
a reel and
yourself,
everything.
and if you're chosen, you're chosen. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to get chosen all the time, but it definitely gives them the outlet to do it. And if that doesn't work, then, like I said, you have YouTube, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff that you
Well,
can do.
one of the greatest movies that I've seen is Kung Fury, and that was uploaded to YouTube as a 30-minute movie, and then it got picked up by Netflix, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna make an even better, bigger, better sequel." That was like 5, 7 years ago. I don't think they're doing it, but I would love to see a sequel
Well,
to that movie.
well, to touch on what you're saying right there, that's an absolutely great point. But and I bring this up a lot of times. I brought this up at my film festivals too. People always used to say, "Oh, you don't want to make short films because if you make short films, you're wasting all this money, and there's no way to really sell your movie. So it's a waste of money. Just take that money instead, invest it, and do a feature film." I disagree with that. I think short films really are digital calling cards. That's kind of what I look at them. You want to do a short film because you can enter them into a lot more festivals than you can get film festivals. You can get a lot more eyes on it. But how many movies have we seen out there now that started on a little YouTube short film that got picked up and turned into a major film? Just look at Lights Out. Lights Out was a 2.5 minute short film that got picked up by a distribution company and turned into a feature film that made millions. That happens all the time, and that's what it is that you look at a short film almost as if like what do you call it, like a prospect. Okay,
Yeah.
this is what it could be. Okay, here's a short version of what we could do for you if we have the right budget, the time, and everything else, whatever. And if it works, people like it, it goes viral, then God knows you're going to get an opportunity somewhere. But also to touch on what you just said about the resources, I think about, like you just said when you were talking there, from 20 years ago to today. Now you've got, when you want to make a movie, you're going to need funding. Back in the day, we had to find uncles, aunts, friends, this and that, or whatever it is, to borrow money from to make a movie. Now you've got Kickstarter, you've got Indiegogo, you've got all these different opportunities to raise funds to help you make movies. Distribution-wise, like film festivals you talked about. As a film festival organizer and also a filmmaker, I use a thing called Film Freeway, which a lot of people use
Yep.
now with the film festivals. And they manage everything. They do everything. You put your thing in there, you put your poster in there and your credits and everything else, and they take care of documenting and logging everything and keeping track of it. We didn't have that 10 years ago. It revolutionized this whole thing, And a lot of people need to know more about that stuff because there's a lot more resources now to make your job a lot easier.
Absolutely. And that's the stuff that we like to hear. And also when, when we have, interviews with, with guests and, like you and are in an industry, and then you can bring up points like that. That's stuff that we always like to then post out on our social media, like, hey, we talked about this, but also check this out. And, we that's part of our job also is to like just give out the information as well. I mean, if it's not, I mean, what else are we gonna do, right? We love talking about
Yeah,
movies, but we're not gonna get any further unless the industry gets further, whether that be small local
absolutely.
or wideband. Like it's kind of like everybody's in it together. We're all trying to make this bigger, better thing. And
Yeah,
we
there's
actually,
a
when
lot
you
of
brought,
people that.
oh,
No, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off.
No,
I
go
was going to
ahead.
say there's a lot of people out there that are really they don't like sharing information. They like trying to keep everything to themselves. They like trying corner the market and use all that stuff. But to me, it's like I love. Maybe it's because I'm a film festival organizer and because I've seen so many people and I've seen so many things. And a lot of times I'll let movies play in my film festivals that some people will say, really? I mean, that movie wasn't. The way I look at it is that no matter how good the film is, okay, whether it's my cup of tea or not, there's always a market for something like that. But the main thing is that filmmaker spent their money, their time, their effort, did everything they could to do it. They deserve an opportunity. They deserve their 15 minutes. Get it out there. Let them have a viewing party. I remember seeing one film that I looked at and thought like, oh my God, but that's what I said to myself. And I played it at my festival. The filmmaker came, he brought 8 or 9 of his friends and family, and they all were cheering and stuff like that or whatever. And I love that because that guy got his moment. You know what I'm saying? It was worth it for him to go out there and do all that. Whether his movie ends up making a dime or not, I don't care. He had his moment in front of the screen with his friends and family, whatever it is, and I was able to help him bring that to the table for him. So, God bless.
Nice. And that's fantastic. Just doing stuff like that. And that's like what we were excited, like part of what we do when we go out to like sunscreen, when we've done that. We've been fortunate enough, like I said, to be able to do that and continue. But it's just meeting the people and also getting their information out there and another platform.
Yeah.
They've gotten the people in the theaters to see it. Then, we post up stuff and put it on our social media. Hey, we did this interview with this person. Check them out. If they give us their links or whatever, hey, you can check them out here, or see them at their next film festival. So we've had a lot of fun doing that as well. So,
Yeah.
but
And the,
no,
and the people you meet.
it's fun, and it's all a partnership and everything. And,
It really is.
and that's the most important part about it. As long as you remember, it's always a partnership and everybody's in it for each other.
Yeah.
Then,
And you get to feel that passion coming
yep.
from them too. Yeah.
That's my favorite thing. Like you, like when we have guests on, like you're on, and just hearing people how excited they are about what they do, and the passion that's in their voice, and just all the energy and love that they put into the art, and celebrate their vision. That's just fantastic. So,
It
um,
really is. And if you can be a small part of helping them get to that next level, whether it be show their film festival at a screen at someplace, or introduce them to somebody who might get them distribution, or maybe introduce them to somebody else who might make a movie with them. I don't know how many people that I've worked with recently that I like. DeAndre Noir, who I love to death, tremendous actor, great. I met him at a film festival.
mm,
We actually had gone to the film festival. I think it was Tampa Bay Underground Film Festival, and my film won an award, and he won a Best Actor award. And they gathered us together for all the award winners to take a picture. So while we're sitting there waiting for the picture to be taken, I introduced myself. Man, I love doing your movie. And he said he loved my movie, and we talked. And I fell in love with the guy's personality and everything, and the way he acted. That I got him to play a starring role in The Clock, and he's going to be in Yard Sale Massacre. And I mean, that's the thing is, you meet those people, those opportunities that create. You never know what's going to happen from them.
absolutely. You couldn't have said it better ourselves. That's actually the best way to say it. And we've really enjoyed having you on. We're about out of time for the show. We hope you'll be willing to come back on and join us again
Of
sometime,
course.
and give us any
Oh,
updates
absolutely.
on what's going on. And your next festival is coming up. When was that again?
October 28th, Saturday,
October
October 28th.
Saturday, October 28th. Awesome. And yeah, just send us that info again specifically, and then we can post that up when we do the post for your interview there. And hey, if
Okay.
you need a podcast out there to do some hosting and do some interviews, let us know. That'd be
All
fun to
right, I'll
do.
let you know. Thank you.
Awesome, man. But yeah, so we are out of time though. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Let's swap out some information offline, and then we'll have you back on sometime soon. But thank you everybody for listening for Movie Talks and Chill. We're your hosts. I'm Tony Serrato,
I'm Gavin
I'm
Bus.
Patrick Wall.
and our special guest.
Rick Danford.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Thank
We'll
you,
talk to
guys.
you soon.
Have a good one, Rick.
Take care.
All right, everybody. That was Mr. Rick Danford, writer, director, producer, jack of all trades of the area. So,
All around just movie industry guy.
yes. What'd you think?
I thought he was a really cool dude. He had a lot of good stuff and interesting stories to tell. It was a small world that he directed the one movie you met Krista at.
Yep.
That you had no idea.
20 years ago.
Yeah. During the interview, I was looking at his IMDb profile and I saw Krista was in the Clock movie too that's being released. And then I like he was nice enough to say, like, you're not going to want to watch my movie. And I was like, that's fair.
Forewarning, Patrick.
Yeah.
You're not going to enjoy this.
And especially since he's like, I straight up ripped like the scariest scene you've ever seen and put it into my movie. I was like, I'm not watching that, bro.
Or when he said his favorite thing is watching people do what you do during horror movies.
When I watch a horror movie.
Eyes covered, crying.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're crying.
You're crying.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
It's raining inside the movie theater.
Yeah. It's got something in both my eyes.
Yeah.
But now that was really good though. Really good interview though. Solid guy.
Looking forward to having him back on the show one day.
Yeah, a lot of good information, a lot of good insight as to his perspective on things as well. So hope you guys enjoyed it. As usual, continue to check us out on all our platforms, and if you want to take over on that.
Well, like we've been saying for the past few weeks, once again, we appreciate any subscribe, like, or share on Spotify. That is our main audience. But we are also on YouTube if you're watching this visually with our faces in it. We're also on like 26 other platforms that I can try and name maybe half of them. People just pick up our RSS feed and like, this is on our site now. Like, thank you, I guess.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give them a few. I can give them, so obviously Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Castbox, Overcast,
Google Apple
Podcasts, Apple Podcast,
WW.
Yep, we're on the radio, WDBF radio,
WDBF.
.fm or wdbfradio.com. You can check it out there. Still going to be coming up on Elevation Movies on the channel.
Yeah, Elevation Media, whatever. Yep. We're also, you can always catch the latest 5 episodes on our website, movietalksandchill.com.
Yes.
Hosted by SoundCloud. It's right there for your easy listening convenience.
Yep. And also, if you guys have any comments or if you like the show, also send us to there, because we do now have sections on the website where we'll post your comment there on our about page, on the bottom of our about page, and also you can check out all our partnerships there with links directly related.
You know what, I put this out to the community. You send us an email to talktous@movietalksandchill.com with a comment about the recent interview with Rick. I will personally read it on the next episode. I don't even care if it says you guys suck, you should shut it down. I will read that shit. I guarantee it.
We may not shut it down.
Oh, yeah, we're not going to do it.
We're not going to do what you say.
I'll read it out loud.
To send ghost email to
But yeah, so definitely check us out on all the platforms. Spotify, all those, WDB Radio. But just let us know how you think we're doing. If you want us to talk about a specific topic, also send us an email about that. We'll be glad to do it. Whether we know about it or not, chances are we'll be able to Google it on one of our fantastic rectangles here and give you some insight.
Which has all the knowledge of human history.
Research.
We can get entire world information.
I will do the Googles.
And they can't put anything on the internet that's not true. So
no.
I tried to say that during the interview, but Tony just kept talking. I was like, oh, I have a funny clip, damn it.
Sorry, man.
Shut your face. We're talking.
Yeah.
It was the part where he was like, don't quote me because I'm not sure if it's 100% true. And I tried to jump in and say, we're about to put this on the internet. It's 100% true.
You said it.
Yeah, you said it. You heard it right here, folks.
But no, overall,
from Abraham Lincoln's mouth to my ears.
So check us out every Wednesday. We launch a new episode. This episode will be launching this Wednesday. You will have already heard this information by the time you hear it, so it's kind of pointless. But hey, I like to say it anyway. But that is all the time we have for Movie Talks and Chill. We're your hosts. I'm Tony Serrato.
I'm Gavin Butts.
Touch wall.
All right, guys, take care. Stop.